Welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour, and I'm joined by Paul Too Much Information Cox, which is a reference to last night for the hardcore fans, and Bruce Devlin, who I'm scared to do a joke about because of his acid tongue. Just going to do nothing. You called me homophobic last time, so...
But you are, and you admitted it, so we can move on.
Oh, we've moved on, that's good.
Yeah. It's nice to see you. How are you?
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm all right.
Lovely.
Great hair as well.
Thank you. It's my own.
Is that a new jacket? That looks...
Paul, are you trying to flatter me?
I am again. I think I am. That's a nice jacket.
Yes, thank you very much. You're looking very sharp as well, again. Right?
Thank you.
It's the tie.
So
It
people,
is. It makes all the difference.
Honestly, it is.
just very briefly, if people didn't watch last night, you made a reference to your private life that was a bit...
It was close to the...
Yes.
To the mark.
It took X, formerly Twitter, by storm, but we'll get into it later.
Okay,
maybe. We've got to do some front pages for the paper show, apparently.
Yawn.
Let's have a quick look at tomorrow's front pages then. So the Daily Mail goes with Rishi goes to war over rail strike. We're covering that in a minute. The Telegraph, farmers lay siege to Paris with vow to cut off food. The Guardian, dismay as households face 200 billion council tax increase. The Times have dissidents in Britain warned of Iran threat. The Eye goes with Cameron to warn that UK facing biggest threat since Cold War. And finally, the Daily Star, the spy who came in from the cold, which is about some kind of spying whale. And those were your front pages. So, Paul, what is on the front of The Guardian?
Well, virtually everything that's in the news at the moment, actually. But we'll start with the main story, which is dismay as households face £2 billion council tax increase. That's not per household, by the way, in case anyone out there is panicking. No. It's not going up by £2 billion. But households across England are facing an inflation-busting £2 million council tax raid this spring, despite Rishi Sunak's promise of pre-election giveaways. Now, I think the Tories have forgotten how to Tory a little bit here. There are quite clearly there's a lot of pressure on local authorities, and money needs to be spent, particularly on the roads. I mean, the roads... Are you in Edinburgh?
Yes.
Roads in Edinburgh.
Oh, horrendous.
They are horrendous.
I know. Yeah. It's a bit of a cliche, but you're always like, what is this money going on? Even though the whole country's broken and I'm paying loads of council
We're
tax.
on GBNews, so we should say things like, it's going on diversity managers, Nick. I don't know if it is or isn't.
You sound like Leo Kearse. He says it every single show. And he's right. Yeah. But OK, so £2 billion, and it's one of these kind of... It's not a stealth tax, because that has a different meaning, but it's a kind of... The guiding angle is that the Tories are promising tax cuts, but it's not. They're not really going to do that, because they'll get us in other ways. What do you think, Bruce? Any comments?
Apparently we're not having... But our council tax has been frozen in Scotland.
Oh, well, we're probably paying for it.
Oh, right, OK, well, thank you for that.
Without even
honestly,
checking,
it's so
I just
nice.
It's about time someone thanked us.
Oh, no, honestly. Did you once have your ear pierced?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. Did you pay for that yourself?
Paul, you have to leave GBNews now.
Was it studded or hoop?
It was, well, it was both. It was huge. When I was 15, I had like a huge old ring, but that was cool.
A huge old ring.
Okay.
That's what Khloe
Should we get back to
Kardashian
some
said.
news?
Sorry,
I hate to sound like Andrew Doyle or someone, but should we get back to the news?
You're channeling Lady Doyle beautifully.
So we've got the council. Do you want to? Well, anything else to say on the council tax?
Well,
or shall I go
not really, other than it's not a surprise, but I am slightly surprised that this is happening under a Tory government, because at this point what they could do is just say no tax rise and then wait for Labour a few months after, because it seems like an easy win to me. But of course, our local services are in dire straits.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were advertising it, but The Guardian have got hold of it. But what about this one? I quite like this one, that Badenoch and Gove on Tory group evil plotters, because Kemi we were talking about this the other night, she's been downplaying her leadership challenge and saying, no, don't be silly, I'm supporting Rishi, but apparently this WhatsApp group says different.
Well, I think it doesn't surprise me that they are. I mean, we've all got dodgy WhatsApp groups that we're members of, Bruce, but
I've never pierced my ears.
I feel really seen at the moment. But what I would say is it is of no surprise, and I think her rhetoric recently of saying I'm really not. Honestly, all these people keep saying I should be Prime Minister, and I don't agree with them.
Just to be very clear before you come in, it's supposed to be. It's actually called Evil Plotters, and Gove is in it. But is that a joke? They could just be being ironic.
Of course, it's a joke. They are capable of being funny.
Go on, Bruce.
All I was about to say, in the run-up to Theresa May's premiership, she kept saying there wasn't a job. She wasn't interested in the job. So I think you're right that she's probably deflecting it all.
Well, She couldn't say, yeah, I definitely want it. The guy's rubbish. She couldn't say that.
No, not.
Why?
Well,
maybe they...
Politics.
you could, Bruce. Imagine if you were in the
But the
cabinet.
thing is, what I don't understand about this is, why are they still using WhatsApp and who's leaking the messages?
What is that? Because you must be cool. I use WhatsApp. WhatsApp not cool?
But why don't they... It's not even so much that. We've just got so much going on in Scotland with the COVID inquiry and WhatsApp messages, and they've all come to light
Good
and all that
point.
kind
And the
of
whole
stuff.
WhatsApp files with the Telegraph, you'd think, stop using get on some other
using
format.
WhatsApp. Or do the disappearing messages thing?
Yeah.
What's wrong with these people?
They're boomers, they're politicians.
Wow.
Should we do... I'm worried about... We should probably move on because we've got so many papers to get through. Unless you look desperate to say something.
No, there was just one other story. We'll cover it very quickly.
Okay.
Israel hits a site in Syria as regional tensions rise, and that's Israel have bombed a southern city in Syria with links to Iran. So I think that's worth mentioning.
Yes, definitely worth mentioning. It is a news show. So let's do the front of the Times, Bruce.
So this is dissidents in Britain warned of Iran threat. Iranian dissidents living in the UK have been warned by counter-terrorism police in the past fortnight of an increased risk of violence and kidnap, the Times has learned. Now, I wonder, not taken away from the fact that it's serious, I wonder if this was another leaked WhatsApp thing.
Yes, good point. Are Iranian dissidents using WhatsApp? We don't know.
Well, we don't know.
And is it titled Iranian Plotters? That would be...
That would definitely be a double bluff, wouldn't it?
And is Michael Gove in it? He probably he's in a lot of pies.
I know he's been out of it before.
I mean, I would say that the optics...
Nice, that was good. He's seldom been in it. Anyway, sorry, Michael. Great guy, I'm sure. So what do we think, though? This is Iran. They're everywhere. They're in our country.
They are. The optics of rounding up dissidents pre-war has never been a good look.
No.
For any country, there are several things you could name in the States and in the UK pre-World War II, for instance. But that's the clever thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they will play on our need to be fair. We've got this, whether it's multiculturalism or progressivism or whatever it is, we have this over...
Or the wicket when we're playing at Lords or something.
We just have to be fair, don't we?
Yeah, we never rig it in our favour.
It's like when we held on to the longbow in war for years, when they brought in guns.
Great
we said,
people.
That's not
That's
fair.
why the Empire was so great. Anyway... The thing is, though, just one last comment on this. This Iran thing. I heard today that Iran is potentially 5 months off having 12 nuclear bombs. How about that?
Well, how about that, indeed? I mean, it's terrifying. There's always been this have they, haven't they, with Iran. Have they been able to do the whole fusion thing and create a bomb? And of course, I should imagine that is a key desire of theirs, because why? Obviously, the point is that we wouldn't want Iran to have it because we see them as a massive threat, and we think that they'd play fast and loose with nuclear bombs. I don't know if they would.
Well, no, I don't know if anyone plays fast and loose nuclear bombs, but obviously we give them far more power in the world. Basically, they're the last people I would want to have a nuclear bomb, except for Lewis Schaefer. That's my position on that. What about the Daily Mail? Do we?
Rishi goes to war over rail strikes. Another war, this time on people, on strikers. I mean, the strikes aren't working, are they? The strikes are just not working, much like...
Just Stop Oil.
The workers, Just Stop Oil. They're not... I mean, how often... I use the train a lot. Do you use public transport much?
I try not to.
Well, I can imagine that. The public tend to, don't they?
No. I have to say, I had a fabulous time in first class on LNER on Friday.
Wonderful.
Yes, I was double-fisted repeatedly with the booze, and I really enjoyed it. It was good. It was lovely. And much needed. Because that could be a harrowing journey from Edinburgh.
Well, it would be for me if I was double-fisted on my way from Edinburgh to King's Cross.
Make an apology here, but this just to cover the actual story, just for fun. This is there's this minimum service which the government have brought in, which is a great development for me. But they're not following it. No. And Sadiq Khan didn't enforce it on the tube drivers. And Labour, Angela Rayner has basically said she would get rid of it. I don't know if Starmer's going to let her do anything, but Labour would just probably get rid of this or ignore it. And
I think they would say they would get rid of it because the unions are in their ear. This kind of undermines the unions entirely. What it does do is it underlines our legal process entirely. If a Tory government can bring in legislation they think's fit to keep the country going, yet the people that it is designed to keep in check don't adhere to it at all, then what's the point?
Yeah. I hate this. I was like, finally, we're not going to be beholden to the tube drivers who just bring London to its knees whenever they feel like it. They ignored it. Now the rail
But then what happened the last time at the 11th hour? Was it not like a Sunday or whatever, and they were called off for the Monday?
That was the tube strike.
Yes, that was the tube strike. That was fairly recent, wasn't it? Was that a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, but, and with those particular unions, they're asking for separate... Some unions, like the RMT, are asking for better pay. Other unions, and it escapes me, are asking for less working hours. They're all asking for different things. I mean, I hate to sound like a Tory, but some of these drivers are getting paid £60,000 a year, and I think that's a lot of money to a lot of people. And they do technically a difficult job. Some would say, obviously, there's that, then there's that.
No, it's a good point. I mean, it's 6 times what Lewis Schaefer gets. I'm going to leave him alone. He's not here. Bruce, we have a quick look at the Star in this important whale story.
Yes, now this is fascinating. A beluga whale finds a new home after locals believe it's spying for Russia. The 2,700-pound deflector named Vladimir was found by Norwegian fishermen with a harness around it after it started trailing boats, but claims it was on a secret mission. Now, the thing is, I did Leo's show on Saturday with you, Paul, and there was a man that dressed up as a collie. And if anyone can see the picture, you can see that doesn't really look like a real whale to me. I mean, it doesn't look like a collie either. Right. But when I first read this, I thought this was a hoax, because unless that's mechanical, how can you train a whale to spy?
Right. Do you think it's several men dressed up as a whale? Because it's bigger.
Like Pinocchio, and they're all inside.
Yeah.
It's £2,500. Which that's a lot. That's a lot of weight.
That's not the cost. That's the weight.
No, that's the weight.
I want to get one of these.
So it's clearly gone over its Weight Watchers points.
I mean, how do you train a spy whale, Nick?
It's a great question, but Putin, if anyone can do it, it's Putin.
Yeah, I imagine. Do you not imagine him riding the whale, speaking into its ear, stroking it? You will do.
Or like hypnosis.
Yes.
This is why we don't want to go to war with Russia, though, isn't it? Because they've thought of everything.
Well, they train beluga whales.
Right, and we haven't thought of that, presumably.
I couldn't fight a beluga whale.
I still don't think it looks like a whale.
Yeah, it's a fake whale. Could Paul fight a fake beluga whale?
I mean, it's probably just a mouldy old submarine.
OK, sadly, we've got to move on because that was just getting good. But that is it for part 1. But coming up, are the SNP trying to destroy the UK? Plus, angry French farmers, the absolute last people you want to mess with. See you in a minute.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with Beluga whale experts Paul Cox and Bruce Devlin. Look at that. Let's get I just liked what you did there. Let's get into it with the Mail. And farmers have threatened to starve Paris, going after French people's food. That's really hitting them where it hurts. Next, they'll be going after films where everyone smokes and nothing happens, Paul.
Yeah.
Having a pop at the French.
Film noir. French farmers have today started an indefinite, that means they don't know when it's going to end, Nick, tractor siege of Paris, blocking off key routes and threatening to starve the city. So say what you like about the French, and sometimes we do. Sometimes we do. But they know how to strike. They're not alone in this, though. A bunch of EU countries, Germany, Spain, Italy, are all doing the same thing. They're complaining about the same thing, which is the price of diesel, the price of fertilisers, all the things they need to do. And they're sort of undermining farmers each and every step of the way. The subsidies that the EU provides aren't finding their way to the farmers in the same way that they used to. I mean, it's like they all need to Brexit in some way.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's I'm not sure that's what they're hoping for. But they're not getting paid enough either. And what they're saying is, you know what, if you get rid of farmers, or if you kill off the farmers, you kill yourself off. It's self-harm.
It's crazy.
And they're making a good point, but what they're going to do is they're going to put bales of hay all over Paris. Not going to make it look very good at all.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because in the past the left might have cared about such things. Now it's seen as a kind of right-wing populist thing. You think about the truckers in Canada, the Gilets jaunes before this, you know, as you say, there's protests all around Europe.
There is a serious point to this, Nick. Sorry to interrupt you.
I was being serious then.
No. Sorry,
that wasn't a joke.
Absolutely were.
That was a really serious point.
You absolutely were. But 2 people have been killed as a result of this.
Really?
So they drove a car into a blockade, and a mother and her teenage daughter were killed, and the father was seriously injured. This sort of stuff all looks very good, and you know it's fodder for us to talk about, but it's kicking off big time across the EU, particularly in France and Germany.
Well, they don't respect farmers, and the only thing is here, it's like the head of a union has said they're not trying to starve Parisians, and one of the farmers said the goal is to starve Parisians, so they need to sort out the messaging there. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, I think what they have to remember is the majority of chic Parisian women don't eat anyway. They survive on Gauloise cigarettes and coffee. But I was watching Julia Hartley-Brewer talk about this with someone on her show, and what she said was, isn't it funny that we need fossil fuels still for the fertilisers and the transportation? So she said something along the lines, until we can have a convivial conversation about this, then what is the answer? Because this isn't going to work in the long term.
Yeah, I don't see why everyone's so against the farmers. It's quite sinister. I mean, people like George Monbiot and these kind of nutters are sort of against farming. But why is there this move against farming? I mean, why can't we appreciate our farmers? We desperately need them.
I don't understand it either.
It's all environmental, is it?
Potentially. Conservatism also. You don't get many sort of Labour voting farmers. I don't know if that doesn't make sense really, because the NFU is huge, and you'd associate the NFU with Labour in some way, I'm sure. But I mean, I don't understand why they would want to. It's basically literally biting the hand that feeds you.
But then that was the thing with the Mona Lisa and them throwing the tins of soup, and as I said, I would like to throw tins of soup at their head, full. But the fact of the matter, they're saying our farming system is sick, but they didn't give any further, information.
Right. Almost as if they're idiots. Let's do the Telegraph. And we're going from hungry French people to Hungary, defying the EU, Bruce.
So this is Hungary, not being hungry or hangry, vows to defy the EU's economic blackmail over Ukraine funding. My apologies, I was at a club last night. Leaked documents suggest Brussels plans to cripple Budapest's economy if it blocks a 50 billion aid package for Kiev. So who knew? And again, this is something, and I'm not going to say it all night because it's boring, but this is something, this is cited in a report by the Financial Times, another leak. Is this another WhatsApp atrocity?
It could well be the WhatsApp atrocity era, which we find ourselves in now. But I've always thought this, right? If you want to measure somebody or the character of an organisation, look at how they treat the people that disagree with them. And what you see more and more with the EU in particular particular is this kind of authoritarian stance. Particularly, now, I'm not suggesting that everything that Hungary stand for is absolutely right, but every time they disagree with them, the only way they seem to be able to manage them is with sanctions or pulling the TV executives. So you can't... I mean, where have we seen that sort of Stalinist approach before?
Stalin?
Seems interesting.
Well, for balance, Paul, I do agree with everything Hungary do. And they should... it was almost as if they should Brexit or something, because the EU are just bullies. You saw what they did to Greece. We got out first because we're pioneers and legend. And they are saying here, if Brexit hadn't happened, Hungary would be confronted much more forcefully. So Brexit has made the EU scared to really confront Hungary and bully them as much as they otherwise would have. That's the implication.
I mean, what I can't understand is how the EU think this looks, how the optics of this looks.
Yeah.
It can't look... I mean, are they so blinded by their own...
Today.
They don't care about it because they believe they're right.
Yeah, OK. All right, well, we've covered that. Let's go on to this one. This is important. The Times and Lawrence Fox has lost a libel case, and it also seems to be a loss for context and the use of irony, Paul.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be covered particularly well, does it? Lawrence Fox loses libel case after calling critics paedophiles. That's the headline. It's not the context. It's not the full story. And in order to discuss this, you do really have to park the personalities on both sides. And what you've got here, if you look at the facts of the matter, is you've got one side is being called racist without any real evidence, and the other side being called paedophiles without any real evidence, which would suggest that those two words are just being flung about. However, one side is being taken to court and it's going to cost them £2 million, and the other sides are not being taken to task at all. In some weird, non-contextual, oh, we're just going to go after one particular guy.
Yeah, it seemed very strange to me because we all know what happened. If you follow X, formerly Twitter, you know full well what was happening. They called him a racist, and he used a rhetorical technique, which you go, OK, then you're this, to highlight the point that what they're saying is defamatory. It's like, well, if you can just say that, I can just say this. But for some reason, the judge has ruled that the claim that Fox is a racist...
It's substantially true.
Well, they said if they didn't say whether it was substantially true.
Well, no, it does. It says that there, Nick.
The judge fell short of making a ruling on whether describing Fox as a racist is substantially true, is what it says. But they did say that the paedophile accusation was seriously harmful, defamatory in basis. But why are they different?
Well, they're not, and that's the point. And that's why you have to park the personalities in this. Because if you take the personalities into account, and someone like Lawrence Fox is quite divisive, people either love him or hate him, and because of that, that's clearly being taken into account within the judgment, which isn't how the law is supposed to be.
You're saying part of the personalities, but did the judge part of the personalities? Because the judge here...
No, that's what I'm saying. The judge clearly...
the judge didn't.
The judge clearly hasn't.
No, because the judge says it is not what he says, but how he says it that regularly ignites controversy around...
What's that got to do with anything?
That sounds like a social media commentator, not a judge. That's mental.
Well, this is what I find very difficult about this story, because, you know, anybody could be tarnished in this way. We're all on Twitter, get called all sorts of things, all the time, but and you just ignore it. However, if they want to come after you, they can use it against you, and that's what they've done with Lawrence here, and that's why you have to park the personalities, because you can't judge him on this moment by everything that's happened before, because that would be unfair.
And one point worth making is that just calling someone a racist now is really damaging to them. So it needs to be recognised how damaging that is. And he claims to have lost work and so on. And, you know, that does happen all the time. People lose work for being called racist. But why are we turning a blind eye to that? It's a serious thing to say to someone. In this culture, it's about the worst thing you can be called.
I would say so, or other than paedophile.
Well, it's close, isn't it? That's where we're at.
Yeah, they're both level pegging, aren't they?
Yes, they do get... I think racist gets chucked around a lot more loosely than paedophile does. But, however, in context, like you said, he was called racist without any evidence, and then just said, well, if that's the case, I'm going to call you this. And then all of a sudden, only one person in that is deemed wrong. How does that make any sense?
Very frustrating. All right, we've got to move on. Let's do the Mail. And Michael Gove has accused the SNP of having a mission to destroy the UK. I thought that was one of their manifesto promises.
Well, I think what we have to remember that they are, you know, they are nationalists, so they do want to break away from the UK. I'm not going to use the word destroy, but they do want to break away because that is why the party was founded. It's so funny when you have any level of discussion with people, wherever you are around the world, and they're like, oh my God, she wants to do this. Nicola, when she was in power, and it's like, well, yeah, that's what she has wanted for ages, in which to break away. But basically, what he has said through the COVID thing, that basically she was politicising it for her own game in which to push through independence. And it's also come to light, now I don't know if this is true or not, that Nicola was quoted at the Times, the 12th of September 2021, "We must beat COVID before we fight for independence." However, what is being reported now is, during part of these COVID meetings and WhatsApp groups and stuff, there was a move in which to push forward independence. So I think Michael Gove is saying that she waited until, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the country was at its most vulnerable, where people were like, oh, well, if I didn't vote for it before, would we be better under her or not, or all that kind of stuff. And then, unfortunately, you have all the stuff that is coming out at the COVID inquiry, which I don't know if the reference to the marzipan implement was true. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
No, I'm not sure I do, actually.
I won't say the
Can't
words.
explain because this goes out at 5 a.m. But,
Yeah, right, okay.
What bothered me about this, Gove is absolutely right. And what he said was a little bit more modest than the headline as it so often is. He said, of course, it's the case the SNP has a political mission, which is to achieve Scotland's independence,
yes,
i.e. destroy the United Kingdom. That's not a shock to anyone. But they're pointing out that often Sturgeon would try and gazump our Parliament by making her announcements a few hours before. In the daytime, we were going to do it at night. And then people like Hancock would say, oh, no, now we don't want to spat with the Scots. We've now got to get in line with what she does on maths. Why couldn't we just ignore them? Kemi would ignore them. Let's be fair. Kemi Badenoch would just ignore them. We felt led by Scotland. You see the WhatsApp messages the Telegraph revealed. We were making policy based on what Sturgeon said, which is absolutely pathetic. Just make policy based on what's right. Am I naive?
I don't think you're naive at all, Nick. No. She was riding high at this point. If you think about the moment in time in 2020 where Boris Johnson rode in on a massive majority, this really would have worked in the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon's favour, and she did capitalise upon this. She's Fagan-esque to me. She's always picking the pocket. She's got one policy, and that's independence. That's all they've ever run on. And then they would pick policies out of left-wing pockets that were popular in a cynical way to garner and buy extra favouritism. And she was doing so very safe in the knowledge that at that point the idea of independence in Scotland was riding high, because like Bruce has said many times before, and I don't want to steal his thunder, is that people, particularly on the independence side of the Scottish voting system, don't dislike the English, although they believe they do, but they hate the Tories. That's what they really hate. And they were just capitalising on that at the time, cynically, and I think this is being borne out now.
Yeah, and then to be very fair, Gove's saying that we didn't in England make political hay out of COVID, but they also obviously did as well.
Well,
we're going to get that in as well. But that is it for part two. But coming up, a woman is told off for singing church songs, and a volunteer patrol group wrestles a knife-wielding nutter to the ground. Just another day in the hellscape that is Britain 2024. See you in a minute.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with the Mail. And the latest thing to be banned in dystopian Britain is singing church songs outside of church, Bruce.
Yes. So a Moment volunteer police officer tells a Christian singer on Oxford Street that she is not allowed to perform church songs out of church grounds before walking off and sticking her tongue out to the camera, which, by the way, looked manky.
Yes. And when it says moment, I believe we have the moment on video.
Yes.
Can we show it? That's me. Hello.
A religion you're allowed to do anywhere.
No, miss, you're not allowed to sing church songs outside of church grounds, by the way.
You're not allowed to sing church songs outside
of church songs or church
you're not allowed
grounds.
to,
That's fine. That's
you're not
fine.
allowed. She just said you're not allowed to sing church songs outside of church.
Outside of church grounds, unless you have unless you've been authorized by the church to do this kind of songs.
And we've missed a bit where she sticks her tongue out at the end, but it was...
Which is a shame, because that was quite...
Yeah, that was it was insult to injury. I feel the establishment's been sticking its tongue out to us for a long time, but that was a literal tongue.
But I thought it was utterly bizarre. I mean, I don't know if it's the case that you do need a permit to permit on Oxford Street. I was walking up and down there on Saturday night, not in that way, but I saw so many, and I didn't think for a second anyone needed a permit.
No, there's no laws against singing on pavements.
Well, exactly. And then the thing is, as well, if are Christmas songs church songs, or are they just songs that are sung in church? Because then you'd have carolers and all this kind of stuff. Look, this woman is an unpaid uniform wearer who is power hungry, really wants to get one of those brushes that you can brush the back of your tongue, because that looked as though it was covered in some kind of lice or mould.
Yes, and what really bothers me, Paul, is that, apart from all the things Bruce just said, is that we are being asked to sign up for war for this country, and conscription, all this is recently the big topic.
And can't sing a song to get us through.
Well, there's that, exactly. And also, if we lost to an authoritarian regime that didn't believe in our values, how would we know? Because we have people in this country trying to shut down church singing outside of church, and you know, she was from Europe as well. So if we lost to Russia, how would we even know? Maybe she's Russian. She's actually not. She's Bulgarian. I've checked. Another article said she was a jet-setting Costa coffee employee. I didn't know there were any of those.
Two things that don't usually go together there.
Yeah.
I mean, she just made it all up, didn't she? Yeah. There was absolutely... It's patently wrong for a start, and then she just made it up. And she was on camera, and she could have said anything other than that. She could have just said, "I'd prefer it if you didn't. Could you move along, please?" Now, the context for me was a little bit unclear. I don't know if they were just stood there singing songs out loud. That could be construed as slightly annoying. There's nothing illegal about it, I wouldn't have thought. And the idea that
the keyboard, it was just normal sort of busking, looked like to me.
What's wrong with that?
Well, nothing, and that's why this woman's an idiot, and it's being pilloried now. And I mean, look, Anne Widdecombe's saying she should be struck off on the voluntary force. Deport, if she's Bulgarian.
Deport straight away.
Yeah, why is she in the country?
I'll go with struck off.
Really?
But I would like to point out, apparently Harmony London, who's 20, regularly performs religious songs and has 300,000 subscribers on YouTube, so go for it, girl.
Smashing it. Yeah, all right, well, let's do the Independent. And a Labour MP has said something crassly offensive to Jewish people. I just write that intro in advance now and paste it in almost every night. What is wrong with these people, Paul?
Plenty. We've only got an hour's show.
Okay.
But let's cover this story. Labour MP Kate Osamor has whip suspended over Holocaust memorial post referring to Gaza. So this is the tweet. Tomorrow is Holocaust Memorial Day, an international day to remember the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust, the millions of other people murdered under Nazi persecution of other groups, and more recent genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and now Gaza. So she couldn't just say... She couldn't just say tomorrow is Holocaust Memorial Day.
Right, period. But then I was reading, going, oh, Cambodia, yeah, that was a bad one. Rwanda, oh, Bosnia, Gaza, and you just go, really? Did you have to? It's so obvious what she's doing.
I mean, I'm a free speech advocate, as most of us are, and I support her right to express whatever she wants to. But this, again, is a very... A very insightful look into what's going on, particularly in the Labour Party and particularly on the left. They don't feel like they can sympathise or empathise towards Jewish people, and it's making Jewish people, particularly in London, feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was so pointed. Of course she can express herself and people can express what they think in the voting booth. Bruce, what do you think?
I think it comes back to the fact that I don't think that politicians should have official Twitter accounts. I think they should just get on with the job and stop putting their point of view over, because I mean, I know when you're with a different party, of course, you're not going to be impartial about other things, but just unnecessary. You have your views, that's great, but why are we paying, whether in Scotland or England, for whoever wages? You know, and I think across the country they should have all their Twitter account. They can have personal ones if they want. They can express what they want in that. But these work accounts should just be for office stuff.
That's a good point, actually. Them and Gary Lineker shouldn't post, because it's always bad. It's always cringe and awful.
Yeah, however, and whilst I do agree with that, the idea that we could say to someone you can't have a voice makes me uncomfortable. I know that's not what you're saying, mate.
You're just saying they shouldn't, because it's rubbish.
Yeah, but I shouldn't. But perhaps I would like to hear them talk rubbish, because at least it's insightful. True. The other thing, of course, is this is in Edmonton. Sorry, mate. This is in Edmonton. I don't know why I keep calling you mate.
Because we're not.
MP for Edmonton North, which is very close to pretty big Jewish areas.
Yeah. OK, let's let Ruth talk, because you interrupted him more than...
No, genuinely, honestly, I think she can have her own Twitter account, she can say what she wants on it, but when she's doing parliamentary business, do the parliamentary business that you're paid for.
Yeah.
OK.
Pipe down.
Sorry, mate.
We've got to move on.
Not
Let's do the Mail. And a Jewish community patrol group has stopped a knife-wielding maniac in Golders Green. Kind of reminds me of what the police used to do, Bruce.
Yes, this is really scary. So the dramatic moment when the police wrestle Knifeman to the floor after the attacker had threatened shoppers at a Jewish grocery store in Golders Green, and he was yelling anti-Semitic slurs. Now, apparently he had wandered into the shop shouting all kinds of things, and it was reports that customers and stuff were going in with trolleys and, you know, to get him down and all that kind of stuff, and then the police had come when he was on the street and they had recovered a knife. I don't know if it was on him or close by him, but that's very scary.
Terrifying, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a Jewish group that just patrols themselves. They'll hold criminals until the police arrive. They'll give the police information. But you sort of feel like, I mean, the fact that we need that is quite disturbing. But I feel like we need more of these.
Do you remember the Guardian Angels in New York, on the Underground in New York?
Yeah.
Sort of, you know, bomber jackets.
Shomrim, these are called in northwest London. But we need like loads of these groups. I feel.
The trouble is with these sort of renegade vigilantes is it leads to more crime. You shouldn't need it, should you? I mean, fair play. In fact, actually, I'm glad that they were there, because this could have escalated into something very nasty. I mean, once again, it's one of those things that definitely won't happen, but is happening every single week, particularly in these areas where Jewish people live. And we're told by the caring left on a constant basis that they really, really do care for the Jewish people. They just don't like certain things. It's nonsense. These are the people you are defending when you come out with this stuff.
Yeah. Shocking, and it's shocking that we need such groups, but I'm glad they did this. It was a great job. Let's do the Times. And Stonewall's all-out assault on women continues, Paul.
Stonewall-friendly NHS abuse policy puts women at risk. This is NHS England's LGBT Inclusive stance. It says here within the Times, to appease Stonewall has resulted in women being eradicated as a recognised category, and citing things like to better support trans and non-binary, intersex employees, we should say a pregnant employee rather than pregnant women. And this is my message on this front. You know, I don't really have too much skin in the game. I'm not overly obsessed with the whole trans debate. But one thing I would say is leave women alone. Leave women's spaces alone. Leave women's categories alone. We're getting to the point now where we need to have women as a protected species, particularly in the West, because the idea that you could be in hospital in your most vulnerable state and not be protected as a woman, biological woman, which is a really important thing to point out, I think is damning.
Yeah, and the Tories have allowed Stonewall to just run amok. I mean, Steve Barclay's now writing a letter about it, or calling for a review. OK, fine, but why have you allowed it to get this far? It's domestic abuse policy, and you're not going to mention women. It's utterly mental. What do you think, Bruce?
The thing that really struck out for me was they don't mention men who are domestically abused at all, whether, you know, how to refer to them or any of that kind of stuff. That was the thing that really stood out to me, that, you know, we have to remember that men are also victims.
Good point. Yeah.
They don't want to mention men or women. They want to talk about, you know, pregnant people and all this absolute nonsense. Yes, it's...
But in this particular setting, let's just ignore everything else just for a second. In this particular setting, it's outrageous that we can't talk about biology, because it's the one setting in which biology really, really matters. And to just erase it in this way is unsafe.
Absolutely insane, but that is it for part 3. But coming up in the final section, is the moon shrinking, and do you need a sex clause before you get married? We'll answer both in a couple of minutes.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get into it with The Telegraph. And BBC staff have been told not to hire candidates who are dismissive of diversity and inclusion, which I, for one, would never be, Bruce.
That's true, Nick. So critics believe guidelines is a mechanism to maintain groupthink and promote controversial ideas. BBC staff are told to hire candidates who are dismissive of diversity and inclusion, The Telegraph can disclose. So this is to do with a new recruitment policy document that says applicants should be asked to explain what diversity and inclusion means to you. Should you be successful, what opportunities do you see for you to promote, celebrate or encourage diversity and inclusion in your role?
Ugh.
That's quite a lot. But did Channel 4 not have something to do with that, where they...
Yes, they did recently,
that was quite recent, wasn't it?
They were criticised for having too many white men on the board or
Yes.
something by another white man whose name was Cheshire. Yes, I remember. It's so ridiculous. I mean, people are getting so sick of this, but certain institutions are behind. It's actually in America people are realising. Bill Ackman, I said this the other day, massive donor to the Democrats, donated $1 million to Dean Phillips, who then removed any mention of DEI from his website because Ackman called it inherently racist, which is correct. Elon Musk has called it racist. It's systemic racism against white people. Sounds silly to people, but that's what it is. What else can you call it?
Well, it's exactly. I mean, no one does call it that. Or
and sometimes Asian people in certain contexts, if it's like university applications, is a similar thing. That's affirmative action, but it's a similar concept.
I mean, I was going to say that nobody's saying diversity is bad, but me and you definitely are, for sure. And I don't want to throw Bruce under that bus. But it's not that diversity is bad, it's the way it's been redefined. So everything is seen through the prism of skin colour, sexuality, rather than a diversity of abilities or outlooks or perspectives. Yeah. You know, this panel, if it was just... If it had just one straight white male, I mean, that would be amazing. I don't know what I'm saying. That would be amazing. But I'm glad there is some diversity.
You mean if it was just you that got work?
Yeah, if it was just Gammon that got work, I'd be really happy. But what I don't mean that. What I mean is we don't see any real diversity of ideas as an outcome in this. We see diversity as seen through this weird prism.
You're worried about sort of attacking diversity. You're accepting their premise. They're just lying about what it is. It's not inclusion. It's excluding certain people who they don't like. So it's not inclusion and it's not diversity of thought, as you've said. So it's just their language. The woke language is always the opposite of what it is, of what they claim. So yeah, absolute nonsense. I'm so sick of it. People are getting sick of it. People are dropping it. PricewaterhouseCoopers were forced to drop it. Who else the other day was said they've wasted $1 million on it in a year and they've just decided to scrap it now? I can't remember. Someone else. People are starting to get rid of it, but BBC are way behind. Surprise. Anyway, I think we've pretty much done that one. Should we do The Guardian? And turns out Alzheimer's can pass between humans. Just don't sit too near Lewis Schaefer, Paul. Again, I've had a pop at Lewis. I don't know what's wrong with me.
You'll be sitting at home loving this. Alzheimer's can pass between humans in rare medical accidents, studies suggest. So a handful of patients who received human growth hormones from deceased donors in now-banned practice went on to develop signs of Alzheimer's. What I should point out is this happened and hasn't happened since 1985, so it's kind of a defunct story in the sense that it's no longer being done, but rightly so, because what they do, obviously you don't know this stuff until you do it. But down here it says of the 80 such cases in the UK, some were also found to have protein called amyloid beta, in their brains when they died, a hallmark of the Alzheimer's disease. This practice was banned in 1985.
Well, I'm not sure we should take too much time on it, because our producer spiked the story tonight because it was really from 2019 rehashed. This is 1985. People still had mullets. Anything on that, Bruce? Should we just get on to something more fun? Let's do the Mail then, with a story about the best days to stay away from women, Bruce.
Right, so I'm not necessarily sure I'm the correct person in which to be breaking this. However, because I'm not, a gynecological expert explains fascinating reason why most women start their period on a Thursday or a Friday. Women's menstrual cycles are not all in sync with the changing phases of the moon, according to a new research. For decades, alternative health gurus have argued that the moon cycles affect our sleep and therefore can be used to predict when your period will come. But this is a complete myth, according to a new research by European scientists presented on social media by New York-based fertility expert Dr. Stephen Poulter. Interesting, again, it's a man that's talking about this. I did read on Twitter, there's a journalist, I can't remember, and she made a really funny joke that said, I love the home magazine Period Homes, it only comes out once a month. And that really made me laugh for ages.
Yes, apparently on a Thursday and Friday, according to this. I mean, everybody stitching goes up £3 blokes here talking about this. Our producers just want to get me in trouble sometimes.
It's incredible, isn't it?
But basically, the reason is that it's to do with sleep, diet and stress. It's not to do with the moon, as previously thought.
Well, yeah, but interestingly...
So women are not ruled by the moon, as some...
I know. Who would have thought... Yeah, I was saying, the bloody moon, which we're going to cover a bit, actually.
Yeah, we'll get on to the moon.
Interestingly, statistics show that they don't really start their periods on a Tuesday. And that is all I have to say on that, Nick.
Does that mean we should probably move on then? Well, let's move on and do... people are telling me to go. Let's do the... who don't even speak at all, so we know we should move on. Let's do the Mirror. And a man has made his fiancée sign a sex clause before he'll marry her. Who is this absolute legend, Paul?
We think he's a legend, but let's delve in a little bit deeper. So fiancée orders... fiancée orders I sign... This is talking in the third person. Fiancée orders I sign a sex clause in our prenup or he won't marry me. So a woman has asked for advice. She's asked for advice on Reddit, I think.
OK, but we've got 30 seconds, so can you tell it a bit quicker? So he wants to say, you've got to have sex with me forever.
Yeah, basically, and if you don't, then he can divorce her. But he's overestimating how long he's going to fancy her for. At some point, he's going to think dominoes and a night in's better than that.
Bruce, in 18 seconds, what do you think to this?
Goodness.
That's what you got.
Goodness. Well, quite.
Well, I think it's inevitable. You got all this stuff on the internet. It's red pill stuff.
Would you do it?
Men are going... yeah, of course. Men are going like, why are we getting married? Divorce laws are rigged against us. Custody laws. So I think it's just men fighting back. Great show, guys. We've got to end on that. The show is pretty much over, so let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has Rishi goes to war over rail strike. We covered that earlier. The Telegraph, farmers lay siege to Paris with vow to cut off food. The Guardian, dismay as households face £2 billion council tax increase. The Times, dissidents in Britain warned of Iran threat. The Eye has Cameron to warn the UK facing biggest threat since the Cold War. And the Daily Star, the spy who came in from the cold, about a spying whale trained by Putin. And that is all we have time for. Thanks to Paul and Bruce. Leo Curtis is back tomorrow with Scott Capura and Cressida Wetton. If you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, good night or good morning, and God bless.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start tomorrow, but it should cheer up in many locations with some sunny spells, and it's going to get very windy once more across Scotland during Tuesday night and into Wednesday. The wind's pretty light at the moment. It's not many isobars across the chart, but this low has been making for a very wet day over parts of Wales and northern England. The rain is going to start to ease through this evening. We do still have a Met Office yellow warning in place, and it stays pretty soggy over much of northern England and Wales through the night. In the far south, generally dry and cloudy. Further north, it's dry and clear and cold. A frosty night across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So a cold start here, but we should see plenty of sunshine on Tuesday. Good chunk of England and Wales will be fairly drab to start. Pretty dank and drizzly still over eastern England. But the rain will be light and continuing to peter out, and the clouds should start to melt away. So certainly for Wales, a much brighter day, and brightening up over northern England too. It may stay fairly cloudy in the southeast. 10 Celsius here, so cooler than today. Elsewhere, 6s and 7s. And then the winds start to pick up later in the northwest, getting very windy across Scotland on Wednesday. We'll see a spell of heavy rain coming through as well. There's a Met Office yellow warning in place for northern Scotland for the strength of the wind, but also turning wet and windy across Northern Ireland. And late in the day, we'll see some of that wet and windy weather in northern England. For a good part of the day, though, most of England and Wales will be dry but cloudy. Goodbye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on